Let's transition to some of the areas where they may be getting what they want. We can put this up on the screen. So we talked to you recently about Mark Andreessen and then Zuckerberg going on with Joe Rogan and being like, we got to deal with this debanking, Elizabeth Warren's debanking agency, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which actually is basically like the anti-scam agency is sort of like the best way effectively to think about that. This is no surprise, but Rohit Chopra, who's been the director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and a very effective one at that, who, by the way, has opposed debanking people for political ends. He has now officially been fired. And in addition, put the next piece up on the screen, apparently the billionaire hedge fund treasury secretary, Scott Bessent, has been put in as acting director of the CFPB, and he immediately sends out a memo to staff saying you need to halt movement on any proposed or final rules, guidance, suspend effective dates of rules, don't advance investigations or enforcement actions, no material agreements, no public communications or reports, seemingly giving Mark Andreessen, Mark Zuckerberg, and a lot of other people exactly what they were looking for here.
Yeah, yes.
That's funny.
This is
you just tell
I
us
just
what
brought you here to say that. Thank you. Help people understand what is the import of this particular agency, and just remind them why the Mark Andreessens and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world were irritated at it in particular.
Yeah, so the CFPB was dealing with, scams and fraud and consumer protection questions. And so they were going after, there's this company called Synapse, which was one of these fintech companies, and it was sort of appeared like a bank, and then a bunch of people lost their life savings in it. And the CFPB was investigating, doing things to try to deal with Synapse. Mark Andreessen was a big investor in Synapse. This is true for a number of different investments that he made. He doesn't like that the CFPB was enforcing the law. I think that's my general view. But this is also, Wall Street generally. There are different parts here because there's some things that the CFPB was doing that Wall Street did like. So they were looking into big tech-owned payment systems. And banks are afraid of that. Open banking rules that some fintech companies like that banks don't. Particularly, there's elements around FICO and credit reporting that some mortgage bankers don't like. So there's some industry splits, but by and large, what you find is that Wall Street and hates anyone that tells them no, right? And that the CFPB and Rohit Chopra was saying, no, you can't steal everything. You can only steal a lot, right? And
how dare you?
Yeah, I know. How dare you, right? And the Silicon Valley, was getting and has been getting into payments and banking style arrangements for a long time.
Especially Meta. Yeah,
Elon himself is interested in this for Twitter as well.
Yeah, it's the original, vision of Confinity and X is literally PayPal. That's what the design of the company was.
He made his original money from PayPal, so that was a big part of it. But yeah, Meta's into it. Amazon is hugely into it too. I mean, there's Meta tried to start their own currency, like Libra, right? And I know it, and everyone was like, how dare Biden be so mean to Meta? And it's like, that was blocked under Trump, right? First Trump. So we got to come up with a nomenclature for first Trump and now Trump.
Trump 1.0.
Yeah. Trump 2.0 is what
I use 1 and 2.
Yeah, that's what I've been going with as well. Trump the return. I don't know. Let's also talk. Let's go to C4. So this is sort of more directly related to the CFPB. You've had a similar order go out at the SEC, that's the Security Exchange Commission, which looks at sort of insider trading and other white-collar banking crimes. So they say that this change has not previously been reported, made under new leadership. They are tightening oversight of probes, basically making it so that you have to go through the political appointees. If you want to, you can start an investigation, but if you're actually going to launch an official probe, you've got to go through the political appointees. How should we understand this shift, Matt?
Yeah. Is this common? What does this look like?
So this is actually a big deal. It's one of these things that annoying people like me pay attention to. When you're an investigator, if you have to get permission from your boss to look into something, you're going to look into less stuff, right? And at a bunch of agencies, sometimes they delegate authority to staff to look into stuff, and sometimes they don't. This is actually true in Congress too. Like Congress has investigative authority. Sometimes they let the chairman issue subpoenas. Sometimes the whole committee has to vote on subpoenas. It's a very different arrangement if you have one guy who can just issue a subpoena if he wants to. And that's basically what they're saying here is what they're now saying is if you work at the SEC, you have to get permission from the Republican commissioners about whether to investigate something. And so that just provides a much tighter level of control over what the SEC is doing and means that the SEC is not going to be doing as much.
Has it worked like that in the past, do you know? Is this like a reverse of guidance under Biden or
I think
under Obama?
Well, so what that article said, and I'm just going off what that article on the screen said, is that it's traditionally the SEC gives wide latitude to its people to just investigate. I know that the Federal Trade Commission they, in the consumer branch of the Federal Trade Commission, they've historically allowed staff to just kind of, I got a hunch that there's that vitamin supplement guy is scamming people. I'm going to go investigate. I'm not going to bug the commissioners every time. On the competition side, for antitrust, they traditionally did have to get permission to investigate companies. A couple of years ago, the FTC changed that and said, actually now on the competition side, if you smell something that's off, you can go and investigate. And so that's a way of just kind of saying, we're going to let you do more. But there are implications to it, right? So if things are going through staff doesn't always have a good political sense. And so sometimes they can issue investigative demands that are intimidating or scary or whatever. So it's not like a completely outrageous proposal, but in the context of the SEC, in the context of what Trump is doing more broadly, it really is about, shutting down investigation of corporate crime. And we're essentially in the moment of the white collar purge, right? All crime is legal, right? And that is kind of true, I think, for the next 6 months, year, or something like that. I mean, also the DOJ, a lot of the shakeups that are going on in government, I don't think there's a lot of investigations of crime going on right now at the FBI or DOJ. And, you're seeing the CFPB shut down, you're seeing the SEC basically same, sort of very similar. You're seeing, I think, a rollback at the consumer protection side of the FTC, not the competition side. So what you, I think, broadly are going to see is that there's going to be a wide latitude for pushing the law or just violating the law if you have a suit and tie.
Wow, scary.
Can you respond to some of the discourse online that I've been watching, spectating? Is there's this analysis of, you people got your way, you antitrust people got your way under Biden,
right?
And the public voted for Trump anyway,
right?
And so you're this stuff you care about, your whole competition and going after white collar criminals, like it's not all that popular,
right?
What is your view of that? And because I do think that Biden, because he was an old man who couldn't really articulate much of anything about anything, did fail to enlist the American people in a project that was pissing off the tech barons and the Wall Street people and is part of why they decided to completely throw in with Trump. So it ended up, in a sense, I'm glad that the enforcement actions happen. I think that stuff is important and hopefully has lasting reverberating impacts. But in a sense, you got 4 years of a better approach. You pissed off powerful people, but you didn't enlist the American people and help them understand what you were doing to create a sort of like popular understanding of why these things are important, which makes it easy for Mark Andreessen to go on Joe Rogan's podcast and be like, the CFPB, they're debanking conservatives, and loop it all into some, culture bullshit, culture war umbrella.
Yeah, so I think there's two ways to understand what happened. Okay, so one, I think we can go into ways that the anti-monopolists sort of things that we didn't do enough of. I'll say we, because I consider myself this sort of a movement, and stuff that's kind of our fault, right? And then I think there's the broader dynamic. So let's just divide it into two different things. I think the broader dynamic is far more impactful. So just to give you a sense of how much power the anti-monopolists had. So if you take the CFPB, right, the antitrust enforcers, which are in the Federal Trade Commission and the Antitrust Division, total budget, right, of all three of those is less than $1 billion, okay? The rest of the government, I don't know, what is that, $5 trillion, something like that?
Yeah.
So, you're talking about a very, very, very small part of the government. Now, it was, I think, important and people noticed it because they were the only ones doing something that was actually different and articulating, maybe not a new agenda, but an agenda that the Democrats would have recognized in the 1930s or 1960s or something like that.
Yeah.
But the rest of the government, right? Javier Becerra at Health and Human Services, right? When was the last time we heard his name, right? Didn't do anything.
Right.
Right? And so how much can you really accomplish out of a couple of regulatory agencies when the Federal Reserve, and nobody is like, oh man, that Jay Powell at the Federal Reserve, that's the reason Democrats lost, right? It's because that's just the water we're swimming in. Oh man, that Janet Yellen at Treasury Department. Oh man, that,
Although Powell probably had more to do it with anybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, out of anybody else, it's probably
your point.
Powell. Yeah.
No one's thinking that, but they should.
In 2022, Democrats overperformed in the midterms at the height of inflation.
Right.
In 2024, we got crushed.
Yes.
Because people didn't want high interest rates.
Right. Yeah.
It was a high interest rate election, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's what
you might be right.
I think that people noticed the anti-monopolists because that was different, right? But it wasn't dominant in the administration. The other thing is there was no alignment between the politics and the policy of the entire. So, what you said is right. Biden didn't articulate it. But I think if you talk to most Democrats in Congress, right, they didn't know what the antitrust people were doing. They couldn't articulate any of this stuff. So it was sort of this orphan agenda over here. And I don't think it's totally fair to say, oh, you made powerful people mad but didn't bring in any political benefits, therefore it made it worse. I think those powerful people, I think what happened is my guess is people voted for Trump because costs went up, wages went down, and Democrats were obsessed with stupid things, right? And that's not, Lena Khan's fault. That's a broader political dynamic. Yeah. I do think, though, there are some things that the anti-monopolists, the other thing is when candidates were running, they were running on things like inhalers, right, getting cheaper.
Right.
And, EpiPens getting cheaper and junk fees and a whole, the arguments that basically the only thing Democrats had to run on in 2024 that was economic was the stuff the anti-monopolists had done. It didn't necessarily work, although I think in some races it probably did. You saw in Las Vegas or in Nevada and in other states, there were normie Democrats that were running on opposition to the Kroger-Albertson merger.
Right.
And does this stuff work? I don't know, but I'm not a political person, but it's if that's the only thing they're running on, they're not running on the first, non-binary undersecretary of whatever. They're running on, food prices. And so that, and the things that the Biden administration had done. The fact that the only people who did anything were the anti-monopolists is not our fault. Yeah. But I do think this stuff takes way too long. Right, so you launch something Trump launched a Facebook suit and a Google suit in 2020. The Facebook suit isn't even going to trial until later this spring. So that's 5 years from the filing the complaint, 6-7 years from the investigation to even going to trial. It's not talking about appeals and everything. And that's just broadly true across the board. The suit against Ticketmaster, the suit against Google, suit against Apple, people don't feel the effects because it takes way too long. And then the other part of it is I think the agencies did a great job. You can't issue a rule and it takes 3 years to issue a rule capping overdraft fees. That's ridiculous. We gotta hurry this stuff up. We also have to do something about the courts who just block everything that's nice, which is kind of crazy, the non-compete rules, stuff like that. So there are a number of institutional factors. And then I think, this is the first time that any of these people, that we had ever had any levers of government to pull. And so what you're seeing more broadly is the generational dynamic and a Democratic Party, which was basically overlooking or actively helping oligarchs under Bill Clinton, under Barack Obama, and now some of the younger people with no mentorship at all, right, we're saying maybe we should try something different, and nobody in our lifetime has done anything like this before. So of course it's not going to be perfect, but it is the outline for a party that's going to advocate for the working class or oligarchs. And I don't mean that the Democratic Party, I mean either party that wants to do this is going to have to do some of these anti-corporate things, and that's going to upset powerful people one way or the other.
Oh, I'm all in favor of upsetting the powerful people. I just think, I think you articulated it all very well and have thought more about it and have a certainly more granular understanding than I do. But if you were pissing off the powerful people, but you aren't like an FDR explaining like, I welcome their hatred,
Right.
and here's why they hate me, and here's how it's still, nobody knows about it,
Right.
then you're just gonna have a lot of powerful people mad at you and hell-bent on your destruction. And you're not going to have the, on the other side, you need to have the people behind you to back you up.
I used to have this joke when I would talk to someone who was, working on an antitrust case. I would, they would say something to me about what they were doing, and I would just be like, shh, a voter might hear you.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's really, if you looked at, I looked sort of semi-systematically at what the White House press secretary would say, right? When they were asked about a Ticketmaster suit or Google or whatever it was. And she would always say, I can't comment on pending litigation. And then people would be like, but it's Ticketmaster. They couldn't sell tickets to the Taylor Swift conference, not conference.
Concert.
God, man, I am such a nerd.
It's
really
the plaid jacket.
It's really bad. I
was a victim of Ticketmaster. Well, I couldn't get a ticket. It's true. And it happened.
So, she made fun of the reporters for asking the question. And so it's like, if that's your framework, right? If you just mock the idea that if you mock your own administration's agenda, that's pretty weird, right?
Yeah.
And you saw, anyway, I don't want to get into the Democratic Party. I've been thinking a lot about it, but there's a basic problem that they have, which is, the street lamp issue, right? So the street lamp, the parable about economists. So a drunk guy is looking for his keys.
Yes.
Right. And the guy and the cop says, why are you looking here? And he's like, where'd you lose your keys? He said, over there. He said, why are you looking here? He said, oh, well,
that's where the light
is. Light is. He's looking under the lamp.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what Democrats do is they are, they're trying to figure out what to do about a problem that voters are complaining about, but they always look under the lamppost instead of where the problem is, even though they know it's not right. And that's a dynamic party-wide.
Well, always love talking to you, man. Really appreciate you joining us.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.